Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Tai'Shar, a Wheel of Time podcast. I am Will.
I'm Sam.
And today we are doing a show update episode / off-topic episode.
Indeed we are.
What does that mean, Sam?
It means first off, spoiler warning, if you are not finished with the books, maybe tune in next week. And then also maybe a different sort of warning. If you are maybe only here for Wheel of Time specific content, in a strict sense, maybe tune in next week too. We will relate what we talk about to Wheel of Time, I promise. But, we just wanted to veer off the well-trod path maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
See what that looks like. It's a formless void of a thing at this point.
And if you're wanting Wheel of Time content, we got a little up front, and then you can also join us at the end for the mailbag.
Yeah, that's true.
But so we'll have a little bit of our usual content sandwich.
Right. A little bookends there.
Yeah, there you go. We did have a few people that kind of ask on some of these lighter weeks where we don't have as much show news that maybe we would venture into uncharted territory. And so that's what we're going to do because we don't have a ton of official news. We'll go ahead and get the show update underway. And under official news, I put this under official news. It was the biggest news that happened.
For us. Big news in our world.
Yes. And if you follow us on any of the socials, then you probably saw this because I reposted it everywhere. But we got name dropped by the Watt on Prime account on Twitter.
Crazy.
No. It was kind of funny because I woke up, I looked at all my social media and everything, and I saw our Twitter account had like 40 notifications, which usually happens when somebody says like Wheel of Time dance party and just tags a whole bunch of creators in it or something.
Yeah.
Then it's just craziness, people posting GIFs of like dancing or whatever. But this time I pulled it up and maybe I'm just like turning into a boomer or something, but Twitter is like weird to me because sometimes it's hard to figure out what the conversation is.
Yeah, that's fair. It's not very conducive to coherent conversations. Really.
Right. Yeah. It's just like splashes of
a lot of Twitter.
Yeah, exactly.
Back and forth.
A lot of, and so I had all these notifications that were like, hey, congrats on this, whatever. Anyway, Black Tower said, congrats on getting followed by the Watt on Prime account. And I was like, what do you mean? And I looked on their account and they don't follow any content creators. They only follow like officially announced members of the cast and crew. Right. And so I was like, what's going on? And so I like tweeted, I was like, what's happening? Did the taint finally get to you guys? Finally, they were, somebody screen capped a tweet that was actually a reply to another podcaster. I think it was The Wheel Reads. I may be wrong about that. They they're like, hey, we know you watch The Dusty Wheel, which is a YouTube channel that is really great. Hey, still waiting for the invite, by the way, Dusty Wheel. You've been having other content creators on, and no, I'm totally kidding. I have time for that. Rafe has, I think he's actually appeared on The Dusty Wheel, but he's also dropped into the comments during like some of their lives and things like that. Nice. So they know that he watches that. They're saying, well, we know you watch The Dusty Wheel, but do you listen to any podcasts? And Watt on Prime account replied that, yes, they did. And they listed ours and a few others that they listened to.
Rock on. Heck yeah. I would never have expected that. I mean, it's like I was texting some friends that was like, this is cool. Like it's niche cool, but it's cool to us.
Mm-hmm. Really made my day when it happened.
Me too. Mine too. My friend, I texted him and he said, use your powers for good and always remember that Tom is a major character. Something I said many, many episodes ago.
Yes.
Tom was a minor character. It was one of our first episodes.
It was our very first episode. Very first episode. Yeah.
Oh man, I'm never ever gonna live that down, and that's okay.
I'd be curious to know like what episodes they've listened to, if they listened to it and we're like, well, this is awful. Yeah. Hopefully one of the good ones. The only other official news that was kind of a big deal. Rafe was in a little video with some concept art on the anniversary of Eye of the World's publication.
Right.
You've gotten a chance to see the video. It just has some cool looking art, and usually concept art often really does a pretty good job of reflecting what it's going to look like in the show.
Yeah, I love how The Mandalorian has used its concept art. I assume it's concept art in the credits, and it's always like it's different, but very familiar to the episode.
Right, pretty close. Yeah.
And it's like clear that they didn't like do an oil painting of like a shoot from the episode.
Right.
Like they did this ahead of time because this dude is like a foot taller than he is in the show, and what the heck.
These are encouraging to me because I think particularly the last one I'm impressed with. So like the first image looks like, I'm guessing it's Matt and Rand overlooking a river, something like that. That this could be at any point. It could be early on before Moraine shows up to the two rivers and they're just chilling out looking at the rivers, whatever. So this second one looks like you see the wine spring in there, and it's a pretty detailed image.
Yeah, definitely.
You got, I don't know, what looks like candles and lanterns and everything, tables set out.
The art kind of reminds me of Diablo a little bit.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. What this image tells me is that I wonder if they're going to actually have Beltane and it's going to get interrupted by the Trollocs.
Yeah.
Which I think would be more interesting.
Like the fact that Rand sort of shows up and Beltane has been ruined by Trolloc attack. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, okay.
Basically, they don't get to Beltane.
Right.
This is kind of combining because they pass through Beltane at Watch Hill.
Right.
So possibly also compress a lot more action into it because you don't actually see the Trollocs like attacking Emond's Field. You just have.
That's
in
a
the
good
books.
point. I mean, like we get like more, big epic battles, not too much later, but this one does. The first one sort of happens off screen, and Rand shows up like, oh, it happened here too, even though there's a little scuffle at the farm, of course, discussion with the Trolloc. Right. I would be okay with that. I mean, it does seem like the show is going to be more Moraine focused.
Right.
With Rosamund Pike. So it would make sense to, maybe just shift the narrative back to her while Rand is traveling with Tam through the woods, perhaps.
Yeah.
Have him leave. We could potentially then miss that line where Tam is muttering in his sleep about Rand not being his son. But they could do that later when Tam is passed out in the Wine Spring Inn or whatever.
Sure. And I even wonder if they might eliminate that at the time because that just gives it too much away.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, especially if they want to build up that mystery of which one of the three boys is the chosen one,
Right.
Yeah, I could be down with that.
The next image we see is the Tinker Caravan. Very clearly. I was just going over these chapters actually in the book as they are hanging out in the Tinker Caravan, and it's just basically the way the Tinker Caravan looks. There's not much to it. And then just an image of what looks to be the Emond's Field 5 and company crossing a bridge, maybe sometime. Surely that's not White Bridge, though, because White Bridge is like huge.
Right.
Like, that's just a random bridge.
Just some bridge.
Yeah. I take
all the rivers, there's got to be bridges.
Yeah. All right. And then this last one has got to be Shadar Logoth, and that one looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
You got
very gothic.
Big, tall, empty buildings. Which is it, the mist or the fog? Or the wind?
Fog. Fog mist. Yeah, it's not the wind, definitely.
Yeah, the wind. Sorry, the wind is evil in the ways. The fog is evil.
Machin Shin is the wind. Mashadar is the nasty fog.
Right. Yeah. And I guess Mistborn, it's the mist. So, those are the images in that, and Rafe is in it. He's just talking about how great Eye of the World is. He says something about, there's the emotional journey with these characters and themes of balance and gender.
It's okay.
Whatever. Somebody commented something about, I don't remember a theme of gender. And everybody was like, are you serious?
Stop it. Don't be. there's always those folks, and they're gonna come out of the woodwork when the show comes out.
Like, what's up with that guy? Like, I mean, even if you were just a complete, weirdo, I don't know,
Right. Yeah,
something or another.
there's definitely it's just objectively true that there are. And
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
it's like that's not a controversial thing to say.
yeah, not at all.
Like you maybe if he said that this is like a triumph for feminism, like that would be too far, but that there are gender issues, no, I mean, like, that's definitely
right,
definitely there. So
yeah, I think it's very much a part of the whole series, just by virtue of the fact that there's Saidin and Saidar. Even if that was all, it would.
Yeah, and we have strong female leads. There's problems there too. We know, we've discussed this ad nauseum, but the fact is, the narrative is pushed forward by females in a lot of cases.
Well, and arguably, of course, and I've heard people say this, that the world in which it takes place, the Westlands, is largely a matriarchal society.
Yeah,
largely because of the effect of the taint.
And especially in these early books, you get the Amerlin, you get Morghese. There's
I think it's
I needed just one or two more bullet points there, but
yeah, I think we understood where you're going.
Just kind of
you could have just thrown in some, you got Wonder Woman, you got Black Widow. But I mean, and it's just the fact that clearly there is some degree to which Robert Jordan was like, I'm going to take this normal thing of kings and princes and kind of turn it on its head.
I mean, the fact that he already made Gandalf a chick.
Right. Yeah. Right off the bat. All right. Anyway, in unofficial news, there's not much at all here. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, this one, hold on to your horses, Sam. I know you're gonna cry into your White Claw when you hear this.
Well played.
David Buckley, who had been confirmed to be the show's composer, has reportedly exited.
No. Hey, now there's an opening for John Williams.
Yes, right. David Buckley.
Maybe we would have a stronger emotional response if we'd heard some music from this.
Right, exactly. I mean, and this may also answer the question as to why we haven't heard some music.
Yeah, for sure.
Apparently this probably happened like several months ago, and it's just he recently confirmed.
Oh, I see.
And so they may have already hired somebody new and just haven't announced it yet. Yeah. There's no report on whether he just didn't work out or what, if it's a scheduling thing, if it's a creative thing, but he's not working on it now. Right. And like I said, I do think that probably explains why, on a couple of those videos, Rafe even specifically said, this is not the music,
right?
That they clearly don't have it yet where they're ready to release it. And there's not really anything else for now. Production is still halted, and the COVID numbers in the Czech Republic, they have been a mixed bag. The number of active cases has been dropping all month in the Czech Republic until this past week.
Of course.
And when the new strain from the UK made its way there.
UK and South Africa and Brazil and wherever else.
So it isn't that surprising. Let's not say darn UK. I mean, I feel like this pandemic, we've contributed quite a bit.
Oh yeah, it's mostly our fault, certainly.
for the global spread. It shouldn't come as a surprise then that the Czech Republic has closed their borders, actually, in an attempt to keeping the spread down. Hopefully, between that and having enough vaccinations and everything, they might have it back under control in April, when production is currently slated to resume.
Right.
And
here's hoping.
Yeah, presumably on the last couple of episodes. So.
Whenever the show comes out, we will spend lots of time speculating about where production resumed.
Yes, it'll be interesting to see if there's some kind of noticeable difference. Like, I think we've talked about this before, but if you'll be able to be like, hey, I think people in the crowd over there are wearing masks.
Right, yeah.
All right. Well, like I said, we'll get into the mailbag segment at the end of this episode. But before that, we're gonna throw on that 4-wheel drive and veer this podcast off course.
Yes, sir.
Sam and I are both into a lot of other geek culture narratives. So Sam, was like, hey, let's talk about some of that. And You know, and so we're going to talk about some of the other things that you might also enjoy. And Sam's going to take the lead on this in our first ever, totally intentionally off-topic section of an episode.
You know, I was a little hesitant to do this at all. I mean, I suggested it. It's funny that Watt on Prime just, tagged us. It's like, we're a Wheel of Time podcast, for crying out Lloyd. I spelled Lloyd. Crying out Lloyd. Yeah. If we had a Patreon, this would be Patreon bonus content. So, you're getting a value here. We're giving it to you for free.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. This would go to all of our top tier contributors. Yeah, otherwise,
gold standard here. I think we can make this interesting. Even if we veer away from the source material, I think there's value in getting outside your comfort zone, whatever that means. But for a limited example, maybe that can mean reading something other than a genre you love and are comfortable in. For us, obviously that genre is fantasy, right? Tolkien-esque, swords and soul sorcery, good old-fashioned high fantasy. And Lord knows there's plenty of reading material to keep us busy in fantasy. There's no doubt about it. But, for me at least, and all this stuff, I'm just going to couch all of this was for me. And I'm not saying this is the gospel truth. This is just for me. Familiarity can kind of breed contempt.
Oh, sure.
If I read nothing but fantasy, I kind of get sick of it. It's like only like eating ice cream all the time. I don't know. Oatmeal. Pick your favorite thing. I don't want to stick with ice cream because I don't want to imply fantasy is junk food compared to highbrow literary fiction. That's dumb. There are plenty of high-powered authors who agree with me. I don't know. Have you heard of Michael Chabon?
I haven't.
Probably saying his name wrong. So he's kind of acknowledged as a great literary fiction writer, but he is actually one who has written also speculative fiction. Mm-hmm. He wrote a really good one, a literary fiction novel, I should say, called The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. And it's sort of a fictionalized version of like Stan Lee and Marvel Comics in like the early days. And it's really good, but it's totally, just about these Jewish kids in New York who write comic books. But then after that, he wrote the Yiddish Policemen's Union, which is about how instead of being settled in Israel, the Jewish people were moved to Alaska. And it's really good. I mean, it's totally speculative fiction. I mean, it's not like a fantasy with magic and stuff, but it is like outside the realm of it's like an alternate reality kind of thing. But he also become the showrunner and writer on Star Trek Picard, for example,
which is excellent.
Yeah,
by the way.
No, I agree. I've only watched 1 or 2 episodes, but I thoroughly have enjoyed what I've seen so far.
I know some people really didn't like Picard. I don't understand that, but I mean, because to me, it feels more like
Next gen.
Yeah.
And then Discovery. Discovery certainly has such a kind of a dark, gritty feel to it at times.
Right.
I like it. I do. I mean, I like what's his name? The guy from Harry Potter. I like him a lot as a sort of anti-hero villain type.
Jason Isaacs.
Ah, yes, Jason Isaacs. And Sonequa Martin Green is Michael Burnham. I like the name Michael for a lady. Like, I'm okay with that, weirdly.
Yeah. Well, to me, the star of the show is Doug Jones.
Oh yeah, no, that's a good point. Doug Jones is great.
Yeah. And
Doug Jones is always great, but yeah, I definitely think that it's a good show. But I'm with you on Picard feeling more like Star Trek to me. And maybe there is some of that nostalgia though, like, oh, so and so's back,
right,
that's okay.
Sure.
That's just gonna happen.
I like nostalgia.
Yeah,
I'm totally with you on needing to change things up every now and then, and I mean not just within fiction, both wanting to get to something, even if it's a different kind of speculative fiction, if it's going into sci-fi or something else.
Yeah,
but I love reading memoir. And
okay.
By interesting people, not just like anybody. I especially love like entertainers and writers and different people like that.
Any in particular that stand out to you?
Honestly, anytime somebody from SNL writes a memoir, I'm going to read it. Like,
fair enough.
Yeah, just as soon as I can get my hands on it. And so far, my favorite one is Tina Fey's. I've read it twice.
Nice. There was, I don't know if these guys are on SNL or not. I've been listening to a podcast, Quick Question with Soren and Daniel. I think one of them's a writer on American Dad.
Okay.
Anyway, it's random. That just made me think of that when you said SNL. Not not really related at all, but we're off topic. So
Oh yeah, we're already off topic. Why not veer even further off
I was
topic?
going to say one more thing about literary fiction versus because it does bother me when kind of I don't know the New York Times, NPR, whoever it is, sort of looks down their nose a little bit at genre fiction. And I'm not saying that everyone does that. And I think I would say generally today it's better than it was 5 years ago. Like there's
Right.
more acceptance, but there still is that like, well, it's good, but it's science fiction, but it's fantasy. But I don't think that's really the case in other countries, even like Japan's a good example. So one of the kind of great Japanese writers, kind of like an export, if you will, that's been translated into a bunch of languages is Haruki Murakami. You familiar with him?
Only by name.
It's very much magical realism, kind of surreal. It really, honestly, it kind of feels like Studio Ghibli, but in novel form.
Right.
With some more weird stuff that maybe wouldn't be appropriate for a kid's TV movie, whatever. But it's very much that kind of feel of just like, well, this guy is living his life and then something crazy happens that wouldn't normally happen.
Studio Ghibli stuff will give me nightmares, though, man.
Well,
I mean,
that's
like,
fair. I accept that. That's true. There's some crazy stuff.
Mm.
But I would say two novels of his, and I'm just as anytime I mention an author, I'm also going to mention a novel. IQ 84 is another alternate world kind of novel, and then he has a weird one called Kafka on the Shore, which is sort of a coming of age story on psychedelic drugs. I don't even know. But the thing I like about him is he will sort of incidentally introduce aspects of Japanese culture that
Sure.
like at bus stations they have cafeterias, like little things like that. That's like that's
Right.
interesting. Not something that would come up in just reading a Lonely Planet guide. Maybe I don't know. It's just kind of like this is just the way things are, in Japan in whatever prefecture.
I will say, I feel like that's always present in Japanese pop narrative is unabashedly being Japanese.
Oh sure.
Whereas I feel like sometimes, not all the time, sometimes in, Western pop stuff, there's a little bit of this, we've got to depart from our culture and make it feel as otherworldly as possible.
Yeah, sure.
Which isn't a bad thing. I'm not, getting down on that.
It's just
but
different.
I just appreciate how I feel like in Japan, it's like they just lean into their existing culture even more.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I like that. There was something the other day about a Japanese black lady who won some beauty contest, and there were like people in Japan saying she's not Japanese, and she's like, "I was born here, I raised here, just because I don't look Japanese doesn't mean I'm not Japanese." It's sort of an interesting sort of thing you wouldn't think about. Like here it's like anybody can look however, and no one will. Well, I would say no one will say they're American.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Right. I used to even be like, well, the majority of people. But, yeah. I mean, I hope.
You're right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
No, well, in general, the planet doesn't think of like Americans looking one way.
Sure. Whereas Japanese, they definitely do.
Right.
They have a brand, if you will. So I was sitting here just trying to like put my finger on what it is about the Wheel of Time that I love, and it isn't as obvious as I'd like it to be. So like when talking to people on our podcast, I've even like couched it and said like, oh, this is something from my childhood that I love for nostalgia's sake. And I've mentioned this before, but that isn't really 100% the case. I've encountered enough people who said stuff like, "Oh, I got to the slog and I gave up. It was just too slow." And I feel, I don't know, self-conscious or something about recommending it.
Mm-hmm.
There's also aspects about how parts haven't aged well, like we've said, Jordan's portrayal of women at times. But the same could be said of other series I love, like The Dark Tower, for crying out loud. That's another sprawling epic that people tend to give up on sometime in the middle because it gets slow.
I can't believe that they tried to make that into a single movie.
Oh my gosh, I still refuse to watch it. They were trying to, we've mentioned this before. They were trying to make a show on Amazon and got canceled. And I think I'm okay with that at this point. So much of Stephen King's material is being adapted or has been adapted. And some of it they can adapt well, and others it just doesn't always translate well.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like, I love his stuff. I don't always I don't love everything he's written. Cell, let me tell you, Cell, that's a bad book. I don't ever want to see that adapted. I mean, like Dreamcatcher, he wrote that on pills when he was trying to recover from getting hit by a car, and it was strange. I mean, a lot of his stuff is strange, but so anyway, I guess I've always kind of tended to embrace those sprawling epics,
Right.
the ones that you can get lost in. I mean, the ones the author got lost in.
Right.
Stephen King has said he has diarrhea of the typewriter. I mean, that's gross, but you know what he means. He needs a good editor to trim down his stuff, but you don't want him to a little bit. And so, I think the point isn't always the ending. It's a journey, and
Right.
I probably needed a good editor for these notes. I read as much as I can. It's really one of the few hobbies I've held on to since I had kids. I try to get through a book a month. Try to alternate the kind of stuff I read. Last year, I did manage to read 19 books last year, which I was kind of proud of. It surprised me a little. Do you use Goodreads?
I haven't, like, as a social media platform.
Yeah. No, I've never really too much cared about the social media aspect. For me, well, a little bit. For me, it's the keeping track of what I've read. And then, maybe seeing what other people have read. I was just going to ask, I'll have to add you on there. I tried to do a reading challenge on there for a few years, but I kind of found it discouraged me from reading longer books because you try to go for numbers. Yeah. And it also kind of made reading feel like a chore, which is really, that's not what you want.
Yeah.
I try to mix in some nonfic, like you were saying, some memoirs. That's a good idea. Some history, biology, and definitely some computer science books. Not gonna lie, that definitely is one of the things I read just because I like it weirdly. And not everyone who does what I do likes to read about it. It's sort of this. But if there was one nonfiction book I could recommend without reservation, it would be A Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson. Have you read that one?
No, I haven't.
Oh man, it needs no further introduction. It's just it's a short history of nearly everything. It like starts in prehistory and like kind of tries to explain the world as it exists today, like going through history, sort of the history of science. Really, I guess would be probably a good way of putting it.
Right.
Which is pretty fun.
I think the thing for reading for me is that it's got to, whatever it is, it has to capture my attention and be one of two things. It has to either feel practical, like information I can use, or it has to take me on a journey. And so
that's a good way to sum it up. I like that. Those two things.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I read a lot of the nonfiction I read is stuff that relates to like business and leadership and things like that are about like, organizational health, things that are totally boring in one sense, but to me are very practical.
Yeah, they get you jazzed up because you're like, I can use this as a practical idea I can implement in my day-to-day job or in the way I interact with people. No, I totally, that rings very true to me. I mean, there are times I'll pick up a dusty, like the Go programming language book and it's like a door stopper, but I like devoured that thing, was like, I can use this. This is useful. So that rings true to me.
Yeah, I think, one example of something that kind of is in that category, but it's also kind of different, is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, which I would recommend to almost anyone, really. I don't know if everybody will find it as intriguing to me, but it's written by the former FBI like top hostage negotiator, and he's now part of a firm called the Black Swan Group that gets hired to consult and help broker deals between businesses and everything. His whole process of how negotiation really applies to everything in life is kind of laid out in this book, but it also has just a ton of really interesting true stories of hostage negotiation.
Oh, okay.
That
to illustrate his point, like here's a life or death situation where I used this idea.
Yeah, I was shocked. Yeah, I was shocked at like one case in particular. There's I won't talk all about it because I won't ruin the book.
You're good,
there was the guy that they negotiated with later. Well, it was like a movie. He like contacted him later, like somehow got his contact info and like contacted him later to say that he had done a good job.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's trippy.
Yeah. And like to tell him, hey, I hope you're getting paid a lot because you did a real good job out there.
Wow. Yeah, that's not something you expect. I'm sure that's not something in his day-to-day he expected.
Oh.
Why now, anytime I think of an FBI negotiator, I just think of Michael Shannon from Waco. Waco is a great little mini series about, David Koresh, and oh man, it is real hard to watch. But Taylor Kitsch, I mean, if you've seen Friday Night Lights, Taylor Kitsch as David Koresh is like, that's not the same person. That is not the same dude that was in Friday Night Lights.
I haven't seen it, but I do appreciate
I don't know
Michael
if
Shannon.
Oh yeah, Michael Shannon's great. I don't know if I'd recommend it exactly. I mean, 'cause you know what happens, and Supergirl's in it, and it's really unpleasant. And anyway, but Michael Shannon is great in it.
When I think of negotiator, I think of the episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine when they had a negotiator that was really upset because Jake Peralta got called in to negotiate because the guy who took the hostages knew him.
Right.
And
Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Good show. So I want to talk about something slightly different.
Okay.
So I know, Will, I know you've done, I may be putting you on the spot here. I'm going to do it.
No, that's fine.
I know you've done a bit of writing. If I recall, you directed a play in high school, right?
Yeah, well, yeah.
I know you probably, did you do more in college or did you?
I wrote, I did sketch comedy in college.
Fair enough. I wish I had done more in college. I kind of there was a sketch comedy group or like an improv group. I was like, I should have done that. And I just didn't. I don't know. Like I definitely kind of wish I enjoyed it in high school and missed it in college and just was involved in other things. And I was just curious if, nowadays I write software. The really only writing I do is emails, documentation. But there was a time when I wanted to be a novelist. I'm sure that's true for a lot of people, especially probably people listening to this podcast.
Oh yeah. I mean, I definitely, when I was a kid, I was like, I'm going to write stuff. And honestly, I'm not nearly as voracious a reader as you, Sam. And one of the things that I think probably has kept me from doing it more is just the fact that I realize like there's so much good stuff out there that I probably should read.
Oh yeah, sure. That's fair. Yeah.
Before writing anything.
Sure. No, I get that. My dad's a writer. He's written a couple of novels, self-published, not like anything. Done freelance journalism, but he told me when I was younger that everyone should write a book. It teaches you things about yourself that nothing else really can. I've written 3. They're awful, terrible, no good stuff that will never, ever see the light of day. But, it gave me a sense of respect for the people who managed to get paid to do this, and that was Stephen King's metric for whether or not your stuff is good, if you can get someone to pay you for it. And by the way, I keep mentioning Stephen King. He said all this stuff in his memoir on writing, which I don't know if you've read that. It's really, anybody's interested, it's really good. Half of it is the story of his life and how he was on drugs in the 70s and 80s, how he got, hit by a van after he got clean, that got back on pain pills, and how like writing by hand helped bring him back, and just how he's a compulsive writer and just has always been. Anyway, but it's also his theory of writing and how to do it. And it's really good. I don't think his method will work for everybody. I really don't. He really believes that you should never plot things out. You should just quote unquote uncover the fossil. And my theory on that is that he really just has the whole story in his head from the beginning. He's a bit of a genius that way. And sure, his stuff ends up being a little more chaotic as a result of not plotting it out. But I think he really does plot things out. He just doesn't write it down. But anyway, I said all that to say, to me, writing is really hard, and it gives me an appreciation for those people who've done this successfully. And I think, having said that a lot of sci-fi fantasy writers sort of fall in love with world building, and it's easy when you do that to sort of neglect characters. Yeah. And maybe that's one reason why literary fiction tends to be more character driven. There's just less world building to do since it's set here.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. I won't go into the authors, I think, that have fallen for this. There's no reason to drag anyone's name through the mud. And as I've already said, I know this stuff is hard. I can do no better. I've tried. stuff, but the stuff I want to recommend and have recommended isn't like that, in my opinion. There's world building, but like Wheel of Time, there are characters you get invested in, and to me, that's the difference maker. Be it fantasy, science fiction, literary fiction, mystery, murder, whatever, horror. I like horror too. But anyway, so I found I can scratch the same inch as fantasy with science fiction. That's kind of what I've been building to here. Some science fiction. So there's a big difference. Let's just say this from the get-go. There's a big difference between hard sci-fi, and when I say that, I mean authors like Kim Stanley Robinson he's his big one that you may have heard of is Red Mars. Is actually they were making it into a TV show on Spike. I don't know if they ever did. He most recently this year came out, or maybe last year. 2020 came out with The Ministry for the Future, and it is it reads like a book report. I mean, it's good, but it reads like a book report on here's how we could solve climate change. And it's like, if you're okay with reading a book report, it's good, and I enjoyed it, but it is just not the same thing. So I don't know if that would never necessarily say if you're a fan of Wheel of Time, you would like Kim Stanley Robinson. I don't know that. I like him, but no, if you're interested in hard sci-fi, also Greg Egan's Diaspora can make you question the nature of existence a little, and that's always a good time.
Right. That's why I like Christopher Nolan movies.
Yeah, there you go. I still haven't seen Tenet yet.
Tenet.
Oh wait,
okay. So yeah, I've watched it like 5 times, and some people hate it. I've heard
that like the audio is weird on purpose.
Yeah, there's always kind of a thing, like Christopher Nolan likes to really pump up the score, probably too much at times, but yeah, there's some strange things there, but I really enjoy it. Like the first time I watched it, I liked it. The second time I watched it, I was like, this is genius. Like I was, awesome. But here's the thing. I'm a total Christopher Nolan fanboy. Like I'm with you
on that. I haven't seen any of his that I didn't like. I mean, so I'm with you.
Yeah, I think I'm in grad school. I wrote a paper on some of his stuff, so got really into it. But yeah,
grad school, I wrote a paper about tequila, manufacture, and operationally how tequila's. Anyway,
so if any of you are considering grad school, this is the kind of thing that you can look forward to.
Right, you can write a paper on whatever you want if you find a way to relate it back to the topic.
Exactly. And then eventually they'll give you a degree for it.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I found that to be true as an English major, getting a business degree, and then getting a computer science degree. True across the board.
Yeah. Sam and I are both overeducated for
sure. I am done with school. I will never go back to school. My dad is going back to school again. Bless his heart. The man just won't retire. Like I understand it, and I don't know. I don't try to discourage him. Just like go for it. It's
I don't know.
Thing.
I bet you're going to do the exact same thing once your kids.
I have been spending the last decade becoming my father, so it is.
I bet you're going to go back and get that PhD.
Yeah. Is that well? Oh, now that you said that, man, my only plan for post-retirement is when I'm in a nursing home, I have a standing appointment with a friend to play World of Warcraft and catch up on all the World of Warcraft we've missed. Figure we can't walk or do anything, we can play WoW. So,
yeah.
So I was thinking about this the other day. I haven't planned it, but somehow over the past few years, I've been drawn to a bunch of British and Scottish writers. I didn't even realize it until I was out running. I was like, man, a lot of my favorite authors are Scottish, British, maybe one Irish, but they're all UK. So here's just a list of them, random ones. Peter F. Hamilton, Alastair Reynolds, Adrian Tchaikovsky, Ken MacLeod, Ian M. Banks, I don't know, and Charles Stross. And Neil Asher. So don't get me wrong, there are plenty of great American sci-fi and fantasy writers too. Y'all don't want to hear me gush about every good sci-fi book I've read over the last few years, do you? I don't know.
maybe or maybe not.
Yeah. All right, so I know this is off topic for Wheel of Time, as we've said, on purpose. I just know that after I finish a great fantasy novel that's really sucked me in, I feel a profound sense of loss, like So now I'm reading Brandon Sanderson's fourth Stormlight Archives novel, Rhythm of War. Our readers are no doubt very aware of Mr. Sanderson's work, and for that reason, I won't go into it. But it's hard waiting a year or more to find out what happens next. And then when you pick up that book, it's like, what's going on? I mean, this is what we talked about in relation to Wheel of Time before. And this is how it was when the books came out. Like it would be however long between books. And it makes me more appreciative of the summaries at the beginning, of some of the Wheel of Time books that seem unnecessary now. But man, let me tell you, when it's been a year since reading whatever the last storm, I don't even remember the name of the last Stormlight Archives book, honestly. And it's like I had no idea. I remembered vaguely names and kind of what happened in the last couple of pages, and that was it. And so it's definitely it's nice. So anyway, I do want to make a few recommendations. So two fantasy authors I think are really good, and I would, and if you haven't checked them out, it'd be cool to. The first one is a sci-fi writer. No, she's known for sci-fi primarily, Anne Leckie, but she's written a fantasy novel called The Raven Tower. It's weird. It starts off in second person, which is off-putting, like lots of you, and it's like, well, who's you? And it turns out that you isn't me. It isn't like the reader, which is a weird little clever thing you don't understand for a while. But her sci-fi is good too. She wrote a novel called Ancillary Justice that she's known for, and the main character is a ship who is also kind of a lady. It's fun to read a book from the perspective of someone named the Justice of Torin. Like that's her name, the Justice of Torin. She's a ship, and she's also a lady. So anyway, it's a weird concept, but and I'm not usually one for this sort of thing, but I thought it was really well done, and I think that one may have won Hugo or something. It's won some awards, and I think it deserved them. And it's not very long too, which. For either of those books for fantasy, it's kind of nice to have a shorter book that's pretty good. That's a good one. So second, Susanna Clark. She is known for a book that was published the year we graduated high school. Oh. Yeah, that's been a minute. Doctor Strange and Mr. Norrell. Yeah, so for anyone who's not familiar, it's like Jane Eyre mixed with Harry Potter, sort of. Plus, there's an okay BBC TV show. So anyway, which I love, really good book. Anyway, she released a new book this year called Piranesi. I think I'm saying that right, but it's entirely possible that I'm not. Also pretty short, like Anne Leckie's stuff, but it's kind of a clever take on the labyrinth concept.
Yeah.
Pretty good. And it's got a mind bender of an ending. One of those kind of makes you question everything. Like, was this all something else? But I don't think it was. So anyway, yeah, those are two that I think are pretty good, a pretty good example of some other fantasy you might want to check out.
It's likely that we're going to have plenty of time over the coming months. Next month, I don't expect there to be a whole lot of new news either.
Right.
But who knows? There are some people speculating with the Super Bowl coming up next week, which originally I thought was at the time that we were recording this, because I'm not a football guy. Which
fair. I had not even realized that it wasn't this week.
Surprise no one listening. There's some speculation that there might be a Super Bowl spot, but I'm like, I don't really know. I mean, that would be awesome. Don't get me wrong, but I'm like,
cool. But that'd be a lot of money to spend on. I don't know.
Right. I feel like. Yeah, I mean, there may be more just like a general Amazon Prime spot that might include a clip from it. I could see.
Sure. That could, yeah, just like a couple seconds.
Right. So we'll continue with more of this off-topic discussion next month. For now, we are going to our mailbag. We need to have a mailbag jingle. I feel like, I mean, I know we don't have.
Right.
I think we should sing the song from Blue's Clues. You remember? I don't know if we were too old for Blue's Clues, but I watched it anyway.
Oh yeah, sure.
But he would sing, "Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want to holler mail." So write in and let us know if we should sing the that mail song every time we come to the mailbag.
Right.
First off, we got a note from our buddy Siraj over in the UK. I think he's a first-time reader because he just got to the chapter in Lord of Chaos wherein Egwene is raised Amerlin, and he was flabbergasted at the absurdity of what the ceremony involved.
Yeah.
We had a brief exchange just back and forth where he was like, "Oh my goodness!" Like,
what is this?
He expressed his incredulity. So I'm not going to read it all, but shout out to Siraj for writing in. We love to see first-time readers' reactions or anyone's thoughts on the books,
especially one that has made it to Lord of Chaos. Like, that's good,
right? Yeah.
Keep on going; it gets better eventually.
You're getting into the slog there, but so, and he was even asking me, how bad is the slog? And I'm like, it's really not that bad. You know, we make more over it because it's kind of fun to rag on stuff. But first of all, we enjoy all the books. Both Sam and I have said that.
Yeah.
It's just that some of them are slower than others. But really, if you're enjoying them and you want to find out what happens, then you're going to get through the slog pretty easily. So Kara, another one of our regular commenters, recommended a Danish series on Netflix called Equinox, which features Alex Willem, that's what I'm going to go with for now, who will be playing Tom. Right. So I watched it, and I will say he is great in it. But I do not recommend the show because there is some really messed up pagan ritual business later in those episodes.
Gotcha.
And you just don't. But he's great in it, and speaking in his native language. Actually, I mean, because I watched it in English, they dubbed it, which I also watched it because I'm an old man and I leave the captions on a lot of times.
Oh yeah,
and
me too.
What's interesting is it's basically like watching it with dubs and subs. So you have the subtitles, which are one take.
Oh, I hate that. It's different.
Yeah, and two different translations, two different interpretations.
Right. Yeah, it's like you just want them to watch the dub and just write those subtitles, please.
Exactly.
But you understand how it happens, like
right. Exactly. Yeah. She also mentioned that Kate Fleetwood, who is playing Elida, has a role in the new fantasy show Fate: The Winx Saga, which is a new show on Netflix. It's a YA fantasy series aimed at teenage girls. So of course I had already watched it.
Right.
Because that is, if it's a YA fantasy or sci-fi aimed at teenage girls, then it's right in my wheelhouse. It's I'm probably gonna love it. This is even funnier because like apparently it is loosely based off of some cartoon show that was, I think it was actually a competitor to like the Bratz dolls when those came out.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that's the kind of like they're aiming for like the teenagers that were like little kids when. Anyway, that I know all this because I was like trying to dig into the lore and find out.
Yeah.
But I do actually recommend that series. Caveat that there is some foul language. It's a lot of fun. I'd say check it out, and you do get to see Kate Fleetwood, who will be playing Elida. Playing a character that is kind of like Elida. And so
danger of being typecast, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. I think she's kind of found her niche. And
what a niche.
Just yesterday, she actually sent us a photo of a postcard that somebody apparently had made on Etsy that was from Shadar Logoth, because I had made that joke in the previous episode, and it said, "Come for a night, stay for a lifetime."
Love it.
And finally, we got two notes from Jacinta, another regular commenter, and she commented on our YouTube because you can do that, by the way. And she said, "Listen here, YouTube, Bella is totally awesome." She was replying to our discussion of Bella being a main character but not really being a main character. She says, "Where would the story be without her? And poor Cloud, he wasn't bred for brains. He was bred for speed. He's like a Ferrari, and they needed an ATV."
Like I'd completely forgotten about that horse. Okay.
Don't worry. Yes, I will. Well, you were the one that commented on Cloud being kind of a terrible horse.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, he's kind of.
So
I stand by it. I do. I stand by the fact that he's garbage.
She later emailed us also, and she said, "You guys should totally watch Stage with David Tennant and Michael Sheen. It's British, but there are some cool cameos as well." And she says also David Tennant is Doctor Who, no contest.
I don't even watch Doctor Who, and I get that. What do you know that?
No, I mean, like Moffat's my favorite showrunner, and so I really like the Matt Smith years, but I think David Tennant.
Oh, I was thinking of Matt Smith actually. David Tennant. Yeah, okay. David Tennant. I think I would say Matt Smith too. When I read David Tennant, I was thinking Matt Smith. So that must mean I think Matt Smith. I mean, I love David Tennant too. I thought he was great in Jessica Jones and other things.
Yeah, yeah, he had Barty Crouch and all that.
Oh yeah, sure.
She also said, "Give us more details on the gerbil. What was his name? Did he live through the fall down the stairs? And who was supposed to be watching the gerbil so that he didn't fall down the stairs, etc." So go ahead, Sam. All the details you can give us on
the name.
gerbil.
It was a female gerbil, Tess, which is actually was a name from the Brian Jakes books, Redwall. Actually, that was the sequel, Matameo. You know, those books are about mice with swords who fight rats.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Anyway, so I named my gerbil after a character from Martin the Warrior, or whichever one it was. I don't know. And I was probably supposed to be watching the gerbil when he rolled down and these were like, this was in my backyard. These are like those stairs built into the landscaping. I mean, so they was like pretty long. They weren't like steep, but they were like, it went a long way.
Yeah.
And I think it was, I'm pretty sure it was, we named it a girl's name. So she did survive. She seemed sort of shaken up by the situation, but she survived, was fine, lived for, I don't know, a year probably. I don't know how long gerbils are supposed to live. I don't remember what happened. I think there was some sort of disease. I don't know, but definitely lived through that adventure. And yeah, I was not a good gerbil owner. We had various pets growing up because I had allergies. Gerbil was one of them. So yeah.
Jacinta also said yes to your Star Wars ramblings. We'll find a place for those one day.
Fair enough. That would be fun.
And then she actually was the one that said on Slow's News once, could you talk about other stuff you watch or read? And yes, we can. And we did.
Yes, we will do so again, for sure.
She actually has a topic here that she kind of, for us to discuss. She said, the Shan-Chan, she says, let me start off by saying in the strongest way possible, obviously slavery is bad. Right, the Shan-Chan are awful people. Having said that, they are fascinating culture to read, and I would like to have seen more of them in their natural habitat. And she says, discuss.
Oh yeah, okay, that'd be fun.
You know, and you may know this, but apparently Jordan had a loose plan for a follow-up series that was supposed to take place in Shan-Chan.
Oh, I don't know if I knew it was in Shan-Chan. Okay.
With Matt and Tuon, I think.
Man, that sounds great. Dang it.
Yeah.
Brandon, will you please?
Yeah.
Are there notes you could find?
Yeah, are there notes? Yeah.
You could just do it, man. You could do it. He's got his chop. I don't know, he's got his own thing. Well, he's got his hands full with Stormlight.
Yeah, maybe if he lives long enough, he'll get around to it, because it would be very interesting. I think one of the things I was hoping would have come out of a series like that would be kind of the redemption of the Shan-Chan people.
Sure.
Some them coming around to realizing that slavery was wrong. And,
yeah, I'm with you.
And being less awful people. But I look forward to, as we get further along in the books, we're going to be able to talk more about the Shan-Chan.
Yeah,
so
for sure. Yeah.
So there'll be plenty of opportunities to do that, and their culture and everything, both how it's interesting and how it's frustrating. She wraps up by saying, in regards to, I think, some of our being critical of stuff just working out, she said some things in Wheel of Time just fall under Taviran or Shut Up and Watch the Movie or It's Magic. She was saying, the staff, Narg, Trolloc bands, Elias just hanging around, that kind of stuff. So
I would say two things. One, good point. And two, we will not shut up, because this is what we this is what we do.
Yeah, exactly.
But you make a good point.
Yeah, we're in the unfortunate situation of having a podcast, and therefore we have to talk about something. And so we are going to nitpick at some of this stuff and kind of say, well, does this really make sense? That doesn't mean that we don't like it or we think.
And also, I know, as I've said this podcast, I know I couldn't do better.
Absolutely, yes. And any light critique on our part is done lovingly, and
oh yeah, exactly.
I mean, and also I think one of the things I think of is like, these are the kinds of things that, particularly since we're talking about Eye of the World right now, there are some things that trip me up just a little bit that were like, is this the way this is going to be? And it was kind of like looking back, I'm like, no, like the Elias just happening to be there, and
right.
and Perrin just happening to be a wolf brother also is kind of unusual for the books. Like most of the time, everything is very clearly motivated.
Yeah, you really do get the feeling in Eye of the World he had not sketched things out to the very end, but maybe in The Great Hunt he had, or certainly by book 3.
Yeah.
Like where you just don't get those inconsistencies anymore. And that's why it's jarring in book 1 to go back, especially when we're in the middle of the slog. And now to go back and summarize book 1, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. This doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because you really do see how, as we said, Tolkien-esque it is. It was, I think, trying to fit a particular mold. Well, anyway, that's it for the mailbag.
All right.
So, Sam, you want to?
Yeah, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this different take on our monthly show update episode. If you like it, let us know by emailing us at stuff@tsmpodcast.com or visit our website, fill out our contact form. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Podcast TSM. If you have a YouTube account, if you could do us a solid and search for us on there, hopefully we can get a few more subs and be able to do a vanity URL if we get enough followers on there. We might do a live stream sometime. Also, another way you can help us out is by rating us wherever you get your podcasts. Write a review, tell your friends about us. If any of these titles I've mentioned are ones you've read and you have an opinion, or you've not and you want more information, please reach out. Would love to hear your thoughts on these. I had a bunch more, and we will get into them in another episode. I don't know. I love doing this stuff. I love talking about Wheel of Time, but I also love other lot of other books, and so I really am interested if you guys have read these, if you have other titles in the same vein that you think would be good, other nonfiction, other science fiction, other fantasy, shoot us a message. We'd be interested.
Sure.
So yeah, thanks, and until next time, Tai'Shar Manithrin.